Hello friends, I'm Priscilla Purl. I'm an avid knitter and vintage enthusiast from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. I love to knit from both vintage and modern patterns to create items that complement my vintage-inspired wardrobe. If you want to see more of what I'm up to, I can be found on both Instagram and Ravelry as The Lavender Pearl. In this video, I'm going to tell you about 3 finished objects, 2 works in progress, and my goal project for 2021. It's been a minute since I told you about what I've been working on, so I've got a lot to talk about. There will be links to all of the yarns and all of the patterns that I'll be talking about in the description box below. Let's get into it. Let's start off by talking about my modified Baudelaire crop. The original pattern is by Skeinanigans. I knit an unmodified version of this pattern in the fall, and I talked about it in a previous video. I'll put a link to that video above if you want to check that out as well. The original pattern has a Peter Pan collar, and I love mine. Since I'm in a turtleneck kick right now and I love this pattern, I decided to combine the two. For my modified Baudelaire crop, I used Wild in the Woods Folklore in Wolfsbane. Folklore is a single ply 100% wool fingering weight yarn. Wild in the Woods is a local to me dyer from Vancouver Island. They use wool from Canadian sheep and focus on dyeing sustainably. I love the dark and moody colors that they dye, and this blue is perfect. If I had to choose a favorite color other than black, this blue would be it. This yarn has a very rustic feel, and it's absolutely gorgeous. When I started this project, I was deep into a Chilling Adventures of Sabrina rewatch. I was really inspired by her wardrobe. She wears a lot of sweaters with a 60s silhouette and turtlenecks. This project wasn't based on any particular sweater of hers, but her style and 60s fashion did inspire it. I took some notes while I was watching, and there are a couple of sweaters of hers that I'd like to try and recreate. The Baudelaire crop is a top-down raglan-shaped sweater. There are options for bust darts, a full bust adjustment, or knitting the body without any shaping. There are also options for short sleeves or 3/4 sleeves. I knit the same size for this Baudelaire crop as I did last time, but I did add 4 extra stitches to my cast on, and I did an extra lower yoke increase. I wanted it to be a little bit less fitted than my last one, but not too much. Also, because I was modifying mine to be a turtleneck, I wanted to make sure that the neck wasn't too tight. I skipped the ribbing for the neck after I cast on, because my plan was to come back at the end and pick up the stitches to knit the turtleneck. I knit bust darts and short sleeves for mine. I also knit mine quite a bit longer, so it's not a crop anymore. I knit mine to about the top of my hips. I tend to knit a lot of shorter sweaters, so it's nice to have something a little bit longer in my wardrobe. For the turtleneck, I picked up the same amount of stitches around the neck as I originally cast on with the smaller recommended needle size. I knit 15 rounds of twisted rib before switching to the needle size up and knitting another 14 rounds. I then went up a needle size again and knit another 4 rounds of twisted rib. I am pretty happy with how my turtleneck turned out. I didn't use a pattern, and I just kind of winged it as I went. I was originally afraid of making my turtleneck too big, but now I feel like it could be a little bit bigger. I still have more yarn, so I'm going to wear it a few more times and decide if I want to rip it out and make it a little bit bigger. If I do, I think I'll still cast on the same amount of stitches, but I'll start out with a little bit larger of a needle and make it longer. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this project turned out. It's a really cute top, and I love the shape of it and the color on me. I find though if I move around a little bit too much, it tends to bunch just below the turtleneck, and it moves the whole chest up, and then the bust darts end up a little bit too high on me. I haven't decided how much that bugs me yet. I noticed that after I finished putting some groceries away, and it was easy enough just to tug it down into place again. Currently the turtleneck is pretty fitted, so I think if I do loosen it up a bit, it might help. I haven't noticed that issue with my other Baudelaire crop, so I think it's either the turtleneck or the looser fit of it. It's possible that the tighter fit of my original Baudelaire crop around the bust is holding things in place. Like I said, I haven't decided how much that bothers me yet, so I'm going to wear it a little bit more before I decide if I want to make some more modifications or if I want to leave it as is. I really enjoyed working with this yarn, and I love how warm and cozy it is knitted up. I really like this sweater, so I want to make sure it's a comfortable fit so I can get lots of wear out of it. In addition to my turtleneck obsession, I'm also really into berets right now. Since I had quite a bit of yarn left over from my Baudelaire crop turtleneck, I decided to make a matching beret. I knit the Purl Beret by Purl Soho. It's available for free on Ravelry. This pattern calls for fingering weight yarn, so my Wild in the Woods folklore was perfect. I knit my beret exactly as the pattern calls for without any modifications, and I'm really happy with it. It's a really flattering size, and it can cover the tops of my ears to keep them nice and warm. I've been loving wearing it out when we pick up our weekly grocery order. We usually go at night, and it's been really chilly lately. I was surprised by how few options there are on Ravelry for a fingering weight beret without any patterns on it. I only found a couple of options, but I'm really glad that I went with this one. I'm really happy with the finished beret, and it was a quick and easy knit. I like that you cast on at the rim and you cast off after the stock. I love a quick and easy cast off. It didn't use too much yarn either, so this is perfect for stash busting or making a hat out of some leftover yarn from a sweater. I love matching my hats to my sweaters. This beret looks adorable with my Baudelaire crop turtleneck or on its own. I'm so happy with it. My 3 skeins of Wild in the Woods folklore went a lot farther than I expected. I'd anticipated knitting a short sleeve sweater and a matching beret, but I still had about 75% of my last skein left after I was done. I decided to use my leftover yarn to knit the Sweet Lil Scarfette by Ambah O'Brien. This pattern calls for a fingering weight and a lace weight yarn held together, but I'm happy with how it turned out with just my fingering weight yarn. This pattern doesn't use a ton of yarn, so it's perfect for stash busting. I'm pretty sure I used under 50 grams of yarn, so I still have some left. I think this is going to look adorable with my beret when I'm not wearing my turtleneck. I just finished knitting mine and I haven't blocked it yet. It doesn't really feel like it needs a block, so I'll be okay wearing it until I get around to it. This was a perfect side project. It's a pretty simple pattern, and there is nothing to keep track of in the middle of the tube. It was perfect for when I didn't want to focus on anything, but I still wanted to do something with my hands. It would be a great on-the-go project as well because it's nice and small, but I don't get out of the house as much these days, so I didn't get a chance to do that. I can't wait to wear this scarfette with my matching beret. I will definitely be keeping this pattern in mind for a quick and easy project in the future. It's perfect to use up leftover yarn from other projects or to turn a hat or a sweater into a set. Next, I'm going to tell you about the main project that I've been working on. This probably won't surprise you, but I've been working on the Rosemary Fisherman sweater by Grrls. I'm using Juniper Moon Farm Santa Cruz Organic Merino in Indigo. Santa Cruz Organic Merino is a 100% merino worsted weight yarn. The pattern calls for an Aran weight yarn, but I find Aran weight yarn a little bit harder to find. I checked some of my go-to worsted weight yarns, but I was afraid they wouldn't be quite thick enough. The yardage per 100 grams for this yarn was a little bit closer to the yarn that the pattern recommends, so I decided to give it a try. I'm so glad that I did. This yarn is nice and soft, and it's really lovely to knit with. I got gauge easily on the recommended needle size, and I'm really happy with how it's knitting up. The stitch definition is gorgeous, and I love the color that I went with. I was unsure at first if the yarn would be a little bit too dark to really see the pattern, but now that I'm knitting it, it's perfect. I appreciate that this yarn is labeled humanely grown in Argentina, but I wish I could find more information on what that really means to the company. Overall, I'm really happy with my yarn choice for this project, and I think this yarn might be a new favorite. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you might have guessed that Grrls is my favorite designer. As soon as she puts out a new pattern, I'm all over it. I love the vintage style of her patterns, and I'm always happy with how my finished object turns out. I've been drooling over vintage cable sweaters lately, and it's like she knew. This sweater is perfect for my current 60s kick that I've been on. As soon as the pattern was released, I was online and yarn shopping. This sweater is knit bottom up with raglan shaping. So far, I've knit 2 sleeves and a good chunk of the body. This is my first bottom up raglan, and it's been pretty easy so far. I'm a little bit nervous, but also excited to join the body with the sleeves and start doing the raglan decreases. There's a video tutorial that comes with the pattern, so I'm confident that it won't be too difficult. The cable and bobble pattern for this sweater is pretty easy. It's an 8-round repeat, and you only work the cables and bobbles on 2 of the rounds. So it's pretty easy to keep track of, and it doesn't feel like it's too much work. The cables are also very easy to read, so I don't feel like I need to memorize the cable pattern. I can just look back at my work and I know what direction to cable in. Typically, I don't knit heavy sweaters because I tend to run warm and I get sweaty easily. This sweater really spoke to me though, and I knew that I had to knit it. With this being a heavier weight of yarn and there being lots of squishy cables, I don't think this is going to be an indoor sweater for me. I plan on wearing it as an outer layer during the fall and the spring, and I'll be able to layer it during the winter. Since I'll be taking it on and off throughout the day, I appreciate that the neck isn't too tight. I don't want to mess up my hair. I'm having a lot of fun with this knit, and I can't wait to wear the finished sweater. Filming my last video where I showed you my more memorable shawls reawakened my love of shawl knitting. All I could think about was shawls, and if I could use some of my stash yarn to knit one ASAP. I really wanted to make something special because, as you've seen, I have a lot of shawls already. The only yarn that I had in my stash that felt special is my Pearl Scout yarns, and I was planning on knitting a top with it. I ended up deciding that if I could find a pattern that spoke to me and felt special enough for this yarn, I would change my plans and knit a shawl instead. After all, I can always buy more yarn. I ended up doing a multi-day deep dive on Ravelry, and I was really picky. I wanted something symmetrical, and it had to use as much of my 2 skeins as possible. It also had to be interesting, but not too interesting where I felt like I was glued to my pattern. I only found one pattern that really ticked all of my boxes, and I fell in love with it. It's the Spring Awakens shawl by Francoise Danoy. I'm really sorry if I butchered your name. I'm using Pearl Scout yarns, Starry Fingering, in the colorway Luna. Starry Fingering is a 80% Eco Superwash Merino and 20% nylon fingering weight yarn. The colorway is a gorgeous dark purple, and it's based off of Luna from Sailor Moon. Pearl Scout Yarns uses natural dyes, and this colorway was dyed using logwood and Saxon blue extract. This yarn is very soft, and I'm loving knitting with it. Spring Awakens is a crescent-shaped shawl. It has a lace panel in the center and 2 stockinette panels on either side. It is very easy to knit it either smaller or larger, depending on how many yards of yarn you have. It would also be very easy to knit this shawl in another weight of yarn, as long as you changed your needle size to give you your desired drape. I really appreciate the flexibility of this pattern. That's one of the main things that drew me to this pattern. I also love that it's not a difficult pattern, but the lace section adds some interest. Now that I have the lace section set up, I find that I still have to glance at my pattern before each right side row, but I don't have to follow it too closely because it's pretty easy. I'm really enjoying this knit. I'm debating on saving some yarn to do some fringe along the bottom at the end. What do you think? I don't have many goals for 2021. I want the freedom to knit whatever inspires me at the time, and I don't feel like now is a great time to be making life goals. I have a couple of loose knitting goals though. I would like to finish 2021 with less stash yarn than I started, and I would like to knit this dress from Bernat Book number 121. It's listed as style number 1806. It's a dress with a detachable cape. It's basically a combination of my 2 favorite items of clothing. The cape attaches to the dress by these 2 buttons on the dress there. I ordered a small 50-gram ball of Holst Garn Super Soft at the beginning of this year to knit a swatch, just to make sure that I could get gauge before buying enough yarn to knit the dress. I was able to get gauge on the recommended needles, and I was happy with how my swatch looked, so I ordered 3 cones. Each cone is 500 grams, so that is 3,135 yards, and since I bought 3, that's a total of 9,405 yards. I'm hoping this is going to be too much. I'd rather have too much yarn than be short. Holst Garn Super Soft is a 100% wool, light fingering weight yarn. It's soft enough, but I wouldn't actually call it super soft. It's sold with the spinning oil still in it, and it blooms when washed and blocked. The colorway that I bought is called Prussian. It's a super dark blue, and it's almost black. It looks like there might be some hints of purple in there as well. I think this yarn is going to make a very dramatic dress and cape. Knitting this pattern is going to be interesting. Vintage knitting patterns aren't known for explaining things super well or holding your hand through the process. This dress has a zipper listed in the materials, and one of the finishing steps says to sew the zipper in place. I'm hoping once I'm done knitting this dress, it's going to be clear where the zipper should go, because the directions don't seem to tell you. Until then, I'm assuming it's going to go in the side of the waist. Since the only pictures of this dress are the ones on the front cover, it doesn't show a zipper in the picture, what the back of the dress looks like, or how long it is. None of these things are deal breakers for me, but it's just something that I take for granted when being spoiled by modern patterns. This dress is stunning though, so I think it'll be worth it. It's knit on tiny needles using a very fine weight of yarn, so I think it's going to take me a good portion of this year, and I'm fine with that. I plan on keeping a second project on the go as well, so I don't get bored. I'm going to cast this project on as soon as I'm done my Rosemary Fisherman sweater. Do you have any knitting goals for this year? Are you planning on expanding your skills, or just taking it easy and knitting to relax? Either way, I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. It lets me know that you're interested, and by subscribing, it'll make it easier for you to find my future videos. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye!